listener production.
Hi, Sasha Barbagat with you. Welcome to The Briefing. We already know that AI is being used in all sorts of interesting, amazing and, yes, even scary ways. But did you know it's playing a key role in the Olympics? And the things it is learning in Paris could be used soon to keep an eye on us back home. A fascinating look at AI and the Olympics coming up in the second half of this episode. First, though, Katrina Blowers is here with the headlines. It is Thursday, August 8.
Hey everyone. Well, it has been another golden night in Paris for the Australian Olympians, winning 3 gold medals in 130 minutes to draw level with our most successful ever games. It started off in the water with Matt Wern winning the men's dinghy and the sailing. Then the men in the team pursuit cycling beat the Brits to claim gold. Our third gold came in skateboarding, Keegan Palmer winning the men's park event.
He put the stamp of approval on that run with a kickflip Indy to fakie. What a champion. What a gold medalist.
Yeah, more faking. Love that. That audio, thanks to Nine.
Yeah, it was an amazing night, and there was more gold this morning with Nina Kennedy winning the women's pole vault, and the medals didn't stop there. Matt Denny got bronze in the discus, while last night there was another bronze for the Aussies in the mixed relay race walk marathon. So all of this means we are third on the medal tally with 18 gold, 12 silver and 11 bronze, and that beats our previous best at the Athens and Tokyo Olympics. And there is still plenty more to play for. The Opals have won through to the semi-finals after downing Serbia overnight.
So yes, Sasha, that is all the great stuff. The not so great stuff is an Aussie hockey player has been arrested accused of trying to buy cocaine while out and about in Paris. So Tom Craig is the hockey player in question. He has been released without charge, but he's put out a statement. He said, "I'd firstly like to apologise for what's occurred over the past 24 hours. I made a terrible mistake and I take full responsibility for my actions. My actions are my own and by no way reflect the values of my family, my teammates, my friends, my sport and the Australian Olympic team." Tom Craig, who recently qualified as a solicitor outside his sport, also went on to say, "I've embarrassed you all and I'm truly sorry."
A major win for Australian childcare workers, with the federal government confirming they'll receive a 15% pay rise. This wage boost will be phased in over 2 years, starting with a 10% increase from December, and the remaining 5% will come in next December. So that means an extra $155 in the pocket of the average worker every week by the end of 2025. The measure is being fully funded by the government at a cost of $3.6 billion, but it does come with a catch. Centres will have to promise to limit their fee increases in order to be eligible. Now, the interesting thing about this, Katrina, there are questions about how to enforce this and how to make sure centres don't up their fees. The idea is that the industry is struggling so much with staff shortages that staff are going to have the power now to say, well, you're not, you've broken the rules. You're not eligible for this pay increase. So I'm going to go to a centre that is. So it does really put the power in the hands of these workers. It is a massively female-dominated industry. 95% of staff are women in this industry. So it is a big win and something that Anthony Albanese did promise to address was the pay of childcare workers at the 2022 election.
Yeah, and obviously a super important thing to get right. I mean, it's one of the most important jobs going around, and given how eye-wateringly expensive it is to send your kids to some of these centres, and some of these companies who own these centres are posting huge profits, it is a no-brainer in my books. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have hit the campaign trail 24 hours after he was named as her running mate pick. The pair appeared at their first rally together in Pennsylvania, and they're now touring key battleground states, kicking off in Wisconsin and Michigan. Interestingly, the Republican VP pick, J.D. Vance, is mirroring their movements and holding his own events in the same states right now. The Harris-Walz ticket has raised $55 million in Australian dollars since the announcement. All up, the campaign has raised $475 million in July. That is double Donald Trump's numbers.
Huge amounts of money pouring into that political campaign. And look, speaking of the Republican nominee, he spoke to Fox to share his thoughts on Walz's selection.
I never thought this was going to be the one that was picked. He's a very liberal man. And he's a shocking pick, and I'm thrilled. I could not be more thrilled.
Yeah, so the latest averaging out of the polls has found right now there is nothing between Trump and Harris. That is an improvement on Biden's numbers, but it is still going to be a very tightly contested battle between these two.
Yeah, Trump also, in an interview with Fox and Friends in the last 24 hours, called Harris a nasty person and said that both her and Walz are communists. So, ramping up that rhetoric there. I've got a bit of an update. There's been a lot of chatter about a book called Project 2025, and it's written by a guy called Kevin D. Roberts, and there's a foreword in it by Senator J.D. Vance, which has made it very difficult for Donald Trump to distance himself from this very controversial book, which is seen as a right-wing policy blueprint, essentially prepared for the next Republican president. And there's been this huge pile-on about it, particularly from Democrats. Well, the publication of this book has now been put back, so it's not going to be published until after the presidential election, which is very interesting because a lot of people have been interested about what's going to be inside this book, but we're not going to know until after America goes to the polls.
Which is a worry because, Project 2025 is something that a lot of people are latching onto as a reason not to vote for Trump in the November election because of how extremely conservative some of the policies are contained in this blueprint. But Trump has said, no, I don't know anything about this. This isn't me. This is just operators. But the fact that J.D. Vance was going to have a forward written in this book would be a pretty big indication that those policies are going to be considered if Trump wins the election. And would you ever buy Luxe perfume for your dog? Well, now you can, thanks to Dolce & Gabbana, which has launched an alcohol-free fragrance, Fefe, specifically for dogs and only at 165 Australian dollars a bottle.
Because I'm not just a dog. I'm Fefe. Fefe, the new alcohol-free fragrance mist for dogs by Dolce & Gabbana.
The perfume boasts the cocooning and warm notes of Lang Lang, the clean and enveloping touch of musk, and the woody, creamy undertones of sandalwood. But vets are warning that doggy perfume isn't all it's cracked up to be, as pups rely heavily on smell to navigate the world, take cues from other dogs, as well as potential dangers. And changing a dog's scent could also cause others to misidentify it, which then could lead to aggression or social rejection. All of this said, the perfume has been certified by Safe Pet Cosmetics, an independent veterinary organisation in Italy. And it's not the first time a dog perfume has been made. Katrina, Queen Elizabeth II, apparently created her own dog perfume in 2022 called the Happy Hounds Dog Cologne. I've got to say, I think if this was just kind of rolled out at pet barns across the country or pet stocks or whatever pet shops and it was just a innocent mist, it wouldn't be getting media attention. It's only because it's Dolce & Gabbana and it's a big, brash luxury brand that people are getting upset about it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, first of all, let's just acknowledge the Queen for being the OG influencer in this space. Good on her. She saw a market for this even before Dolce & Gabbana did. But second of all, the marketing kind of nails it. You know, this is not just for regular dogs. This is not just for dogs that are going to the dog park sniffing other dogs. This is for an exclusive breed of luxury dog, which pretty much gets carried around in a handbag, taken to cafes, and that's about it. It's not being sniffed by other dogs. It's being sniffed purely by humans. So I reckon there is a market for this and it'll probably do pretty well.
Yeah, well, I know I wouldn't spend $165 on perfume for myself, let alone my darling dog who I adore, but sorry, he's not good enough for Dolce & Gabbana. Katrina, thank you so much for being here for the headlines. Next up, we're getting into a chat about the link between AI and the Olympics.
Hey, Bension Siebert here with you. Artificial intelligence is turning up in just about every realm of life. and the Paris 2024 Olympics is no exception. AI is being used to identify talented future Olympians around the world, to help coaches identify minute flaws in athletic performance, and to improve training. But it's also seriously ramping up surveillance of crowds in public spaces in France. And for all its amazing uses, AI also has some big fundamental problems like reliability issues and bias. So what should be the role of this kind of technology at a global mega event like the Olympics and in elite sport generally? And what does its use in those ways tell us about the future of AI in our own daily lives? Ari Waldman is a professor at UR Irvine School of Law, and he's an expert in the ethics of artificial intelligence and big data. Ari, thanks so much for joining us. The Olympic Games have always come with an enormous security and surveillance operation. How do you feel about the way AI is being paired with CCTV at this year's Games?
Well, in short, I think I and a lot of people have concerns because we're not using AI here about specific people or to identify a specific face. They're using AI as if it's an infallible tool to identify risks before anything happens. It's almost very Tom Cruise in Minority Report kind of a thing. But those tools are very fallible. Not only do they fail all the time, as a computer scientist out of Princeton, his name is Arvind Narayan, who's writing a book. His title is AI Snake Oil, and it sounds just like what it is. A lot of these tools are sold to, in this case, Paris and the Paris Olympics and the International Olympic Committee as being able to solve all of their security problems, but they just don't, right? How is it that a camera is going to be able to identify with any accuracy potential risks? So not only am I concerned about the use of technology that isn't going to work very well or is unlikely to work very well, but also these technologies have a lot of biases. We've heard that for years. The AI that's been in search algorithms, for example, has been biased against Black names and against facial recognition, has been biased against Black faces and particularly Black women. So you're going to have a lot of situations where these might notice differences or anomalies or people behaving in ways that most French people or most Parisians don't behave, but may be totally normal. And the people that those are going to target are the people who look different. So I have concerns because of their inaccuracies as well as their biases.
Given the magnitude of the devastation that would occur if there were, for example, a terrorist attack at one of these events, should we just accept that we need uncomfortable levels of surveillance in order to keep an event like this safe?
I think that argument leads us to accepting all sorts of restrictions on our rights and all sorts of surveillance no matter what, because it's a probability equation, right? If the gravity of the harm is so great, then the likelihood of it actually happening need not be so large for it to justify the additional cost. I mean, that's a classic Stats 101 decision. So that argument would justify all sorts of surveillance, not beyond what we're doing now, all the way to a kind of shutting down Paris and only letting certain people in. So I think those arguments are fail. They are logically flawed, and they're also very easy. We see them so much from governments. We saw it from the government after various governments, after the Snowden leak, right? We saw it from various governments after it was revealed, all sorts of dragnet surveillance that they're engaging in all throughout the world. And it says, well, we want to cut down on the possibility of a dirty bomb. We want to conduct the world war on terror. It's a very easy step from that to then justifying significant curtailments on our civil liberties. And we're so willing to accept that. One guy sticks a knife in a shoe and suddenly we're all taking off our shoes at airports, even though that is a very unlikely way of causing any harm. That just shows you how not only is that argument kind of false, but also how it can take us in weird and strange and absurd directions.
Is it possible for the data that AI systems are collecting at this year's games to be used to train AI systems for other purposes? There has been reporting that, for example, at the Gymnastics World Championships, there were cameras that were judging gymnasts as they went over the vault. And this same technology was being trained for example, self-serve checkout surveillance.
Yeah, that's how AI works, right? So no one needs a degree in computer science to know that a system that needs data to train it to identify or predict things that are happening in the future need lots and lots of data to train it, right? So you feed in all of this information. So information or data that is gathered in one situation is going to be used to train a system, a computer, to be able to do that same thing somewhere else. So whether they get it from gymnasts or whether they get it from people passing through checkout counters and trying to observe how nervous they are, or whether they get it from schools. You and your listeners may or may not know that so many schools, public schools here where I am in the United States and Australia and Europe, are rife with surveillance technologies. They're sold to parents and they're sold to school districts as ways of ensuring honesty, but also as ways to head off at the pass, suicidal ideation and depression. Of course, these things, just as I was saying earlier, are faulty, but the same information is being used to train algorithms to do the same thing in other places, right? And it depends, of course, how good that data is. And it doesn't allow individuals any control over where their information is going. So you see a tool that is being used on you without your consent, without your awareness, right? Even if we're not able to consent in any situation, right? The fact that this is a hidden or a technology that happens in the background, the fact that it's hidden from us makes us unable to resist it or unable to push back or opt out.
Some of the other ways that AI is reportedly being used for this Olympics include talent spotting across the world, using really large amounts of data to figure out someone who might be really talented but wouldn't otherwise have been chosen for development. Also, coaches are using AI to find minute change or problems in movement that they might be able to use to train athletes. How do you feel about those kinds of applications?
Well, I'm not so familiar with the capacities of AI to help coaches work with their own particular athletes. I'm not an Olympic athlete and I haven't gone to that level, so I don't know what the capacities are. But let's talk about your first example, because the first example about scouting reminds me a little bit more about how AI is used to identify potential job applicants or potential hirees for a job. So what these AIs do is you have a job opening and you get thousands of applications and lots of people want this job, and you have to sift through not only resumes, but you have to sift through interviews. So what these AIs do in order to sift through resumes is they try to identify, maybe a company has gotten an algorithm or built an algorithm to identify the characteristics that are most likely to be associated with high productivity or a happy employee. Those are the kind of things that you might want as you decide whether you're going to hire someone. But those algorithms, as various scholars and investigative reports have shown, are biased, right? If your company has traditionally hired and retained white men and hired but not retained women or people of color or other people, these AIs, these computers, which are dumb, right? Computers are very dumb unless we tell them exactly what to do, are going to associate high productivity and retention with whiteness and maleness. So your example of scouting triggered for me examples like that, because AIs that increase the relevance of the past over the future are going to rely on the tools and the indicia of success that we've had before, right, to determine if someone is going to be successful in the future, because the AI has to be trained on past data. And if that were the case, then no one would have ever picked Simone Biles, right? Because Simone Biles is Black and didn't look like any of the successful gymnasts that we've had in the past.
Do you think that there are any positive ways in which this kind of technology could or is being used at the Olympics, or is it all pretty much worrying to you?
Well, I think a lot of AI usage when it's trying to predict things about people is inherently risky. And the reason why there are lots of reasons why that's the case. Not only are there biases, but as I just mentioned, it increases the reliance, it increases the control that the past has over the future. And as a result, the things that held sway in the past are going to hold sway in the future. And that stifles progress, and that stifles diversity, and that stifles lots of good things that we want out of society. That said, that doesn't mean that there's no use for AI. I question it as a predictive tool about individuals. There are lots of stories out there. I don't know about how else it's being used in the Olympics, but there are lots of situations where, like, for example, the US government is using AI to identify how to rejuvenate coral reefs in order to expand or improve the potential for life in underwater spaces. And given climate change, right, that's a great use. We have news stories about the use of AI to find hidden Rembrandts under paintings that have been painted over by other people, right? There are lots of really cool uses for AI in the medical space as well. But I always worry that when we're trying to make predictions about people, and people are messy and computers are dumb, that is a risky combination because there are going to be lots of people who fall through the cracks. And those people who fall through the cracks are going to tend to be those people who don't look like the people or behave like the people who were successful in the past.
Well, Ari Waldman, thanks so much for joining us on The Briefing.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Ari Waldman there. That's it for this episode of The Briefing. And if there's someone in your life who's interested in artificial intelligence, the Olympics, or both, we'd love it if you'd share this episode with them. We'll be back in your feed with another ep this afternoon from 3. In the meantime, hit that follow button so you never miss an episode. I'm Bension Siebert. Catch you next time.
Listener.